Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. We are unpacking a truly fascinating piece of technology today, one that completely bridges the gap between traditional stock markets and decentralized finance. We're looking at the EquiFlow protocol. It's this totally unique approach to tokenized stock lending. If you've ever felt trapped between holding your favorite stocks, companies like Tesla, Amazon, Palantir, Netflix, or AMD, and actually needing liquid cash, you are going to find this architecture incredibly compelling. Let's break down how it elegantly solves the absolute biggest problem with putting real-world stocks on a blockchain.
So picture this. Let's say you hold $10,000 in Tesla stock. You believe in the company long-term, you want to keep the upside, but suddenly, life happens. You urgently need liquid cash today. What do? It's a surprisingly frustrating position to be in. You've got an asset with very clear value, but accessing the purchasing power of that asset without losing it, it's remarkably difficult.
Okay, let's dive into this because right now you're facing a pretty brutal binary choice. You could just sell your shares, but doing that instantly triggers a 15 to 37% capital gains tax depending on your bracket, and crucially, you lose all the future upside of that stock. Alternatively, you could use broker margin, but that means handing over custody of your assets. It's generally restricted to US residents only, and it involves these really expensive, opaque rules where a broker can just change your margin requirements at their own discretion. Neither of those is ideal.
Section 1. Meet EquiFlow. This is the decentralized third path.
What if there was a better way? EquiFlow is stepping in to solve this exact dilemma, entirely on-chain. It's a non-custodial lending market specifically built for tokenized US equities, and it's currently live, production-grade, and being battle-tested right now on the Robinhood chain testnet, specifically the Arbitrum Orbit L3 testnet on chain ID 430. Non-custodial is absolutely the keyword here, right? Smart contracts handle the logic, not some centralized broker that can freeze your funds out of nowhere. The user experience is designed to be ridiculously straightforward. They've got a really clean interface featuring a health factor gauge and an orbital atlas for collateral breakdown. So first, you connect your wallet. Second, you pledge your tokenized stock, like those Tesla shares, as collateral right into the protocol's vault. And third, you instantly borrow USDG, which is a regulated stablecoin. You get your cash, but because you simply pledge the asset instead of selling it, you don't trigger a taxable sale, and you get to keep the stock's price upside. Let's look at the actual math here, because this is where it gets fun. If you pledge $10,000 in TSLA, you can borrow $7,200 in USDG instantly. That means users are getting up to a 72% loan-to-value ratio. You're literally unlocking almost 3/4 of your stock's value in spendable stablecoins, all while perfectly maintaining your position in the market. Section 2. Protocol Mechanics. Let's look under the hood at how this actually works. Building a fluid stock lending market on a blockchain requires some serious technical heavy lifting. One of the biggest hurdles for any decentralized app is onboarding. Well, EquiFlow tackles this using account abstraction, specifically the ERC 4337 and EIP 7702 standards. This means new users can jump in without needing a complex seed phrase or a pre-funded gas wallet. Gas can actually be sponsored by the project or paid directly in your borrowed USDG. They also use batched user ops, which turns all those annoying multi-step blockchain approvals into one simple single signature flow. Now, any lending protocol is honestly only as good as its pricing data, right? If the protocol doesn't know the exact real-time price of your Tesla stock, the whole system just breaks. EquiFlow solves this by pulling live prices straight from Python network oracles via Hermes. And to ensure ultimate safety, they've implemented a really strict 5% deviation cap. This means the smart contract instantly rejects any sudden, wild price swings that look like an oracle manipulation attack. It keeps your collateral safely valued. So, what about borrowing costs? Interest rates aren't set by some guy in a suit in a boardroom. They're set by an AV3 style kinked rate model, typically yielding a 6 to 9% APR for borrowers. It is completely transparent. There's a base rate of 1%. The interest slowly scales up by 5% until 85% of the vault's funds are borrowed. If borrowing exceeds that optimal utilization, the rate spikes sharply by 49% to encourage people to repay. But, importantly, the borrow APR is hard clamped at a maximum of 50% to protect users.
Section 3. The market hours mode. This is how they bridge TradFi and DeFi.
Okay, here's the massive elephant in the room when putting real-world stocks into decentralized finance. Crypto trades 24/7, right? But traditional US stocks only trade about 6.5 hours a weekday. Usually, when the traditional market closes, the price feed goes stale, protocols panic, and everything just completely breaks. EquiFlow solves this without relying on some clunky, hard-coded calendar. They use an autonomous Versal Cron keeper. Every 2 minutes, this keeper ticks. It checks the freshness of the Pyth Oracle data. If the data is fresh, the market's open. If it hasn't updated, it logically infers the stock market is closed and updates the market status on-chain automatically. No human needed. This is, honestly, just a brilliant illustration of their whole approach. EquiFlow is a 24/7 protocol, but it is market hours aware. It seamlessly bridges the rigid, traditional schedule of Wall Street with the always-on, unstoppable nature of the blockchain. So what actually happens to your money when the closing bell rings? Positions are frozen safely at the last closing price. While the market is closed, you can still add collateral to make your position safer, and you can still repay your debt. But to protect the protocol from stale pricing, new borrows are entirely blocked. And most importantly, liquidations are blocked too. You won't wake up on a Saturday morning to find your assets were liquidated just because of some weird weekend Oracle glitch. Section 4. DILT for security. This is where we look at the production-grade stuff. In the wild west of smart contracts, a great idea is basically worthless if the code isn't secure. EquiFlow has been heavily focused on proving this is a production-grade application. They have successfully completed 7 rigorous security audit rounds. 7! They didn't just build this and cross their fingers. They subjected their code to intense, repeated scrutiny to find and fix vulnerabilities. You can actually go read these audit results publicly documented on their GitHub right now. Today, 0 critical issues remain open. 0 high issues. 0 medium issues. Every major vulnerability identified in the early passes, like, how they handled stale price escape hatches and bad debt write-offs, has been fully 100% resolved in the code. And beyond those external audits, their internal testing is just as relentless. They boast 148 passing tests. This comprehensive test suite covers their ERC 4626 compliant multi-collateral vault, the complex math of their interest rate models, and all of the price adapters that are communicating with the Oracle. This is where we see some really hardcore developer ingenuity on display to make this all work. Because of all the security fixes added from those audits, the main contract actually exceeded the strict 24 kilobyte size limit imposed by the Ethereum network. That's known as EIP 170. To make it fit, the developers had to use some extreme technical workarounds. They dropped the optimizer runs down to 1, they deduplicated view loops in the code, extracted all the heavy math into a completely separate Vault math library, and even stripped out the CBOR metadata. They managed to deploy it with literally just 82 bytes to spare. Talk about cutting it close. So that brings us to a really exciting thought to wrap up today's explainer. We've just seen how EquiFlow elegantly bridges a 24/7 smart contract network with a rigid 6.5-hour traditional stock market without breaking anything. If architectures like this can safely and securely tokenize and lend against shares of Tesla and Amazon, what other illiquid real-world assets are finally ready for the DeFi treatment? I mean, real estate? Commodities? The door is wide open, and the infrastructure is clearly arriving. Thanks for learning with me today, and definitely keep your eyes on how this space evolves.